every shout. Tune in, feel the energy ignite. Oh, rise and grind, take flight. Hey, feel the unity, the pride's electrified. There, under the stadium lights, where legends thrive. Every touchdown, we're close to clock west. In Detroit, we stand. Give it out there. Rise and grind, Detroit's calling out. Yeah, football dreams in every shout. Feel the energy ignite. Oh, rise and grind, take flight.
All right, welcome into Rise and Grind Morning Show. It is Friday, January 24th. Apologize about being a little bit late, but we have, Eric's Gremlins. They've been back this week. I'm going to blame Eric, even though it's not his fault. So we've had a little technical difficulty. But we've got a full show today, including an extra guest this morning. So let's bring in Eric this morning. Eric, oh, goodness. How you doing this morning, man?
Oh, fantastic as always. Oh, man.
So
Isn't it nice
Go ahead.
for once that we're stealing Rodgers from the grasp of the Green Bay Packers?
What did you just say?
We stole Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers.
Oh,
Can you
no.
believe it?
I see what you're doing there. Yeah, I see what you're doing there. So anyway, listen, we've got, somewhat of a full show today, but most importantly, we are ending. This is the first week after the loss, and so we are going to try to wrap it up a little bit today. I'm still working on trying to get some people to jump in and do a full wrap-up show. Maybe we can do it over the weekend. Maybe we'll do it next week, but I want to bring in some people to talk about it and just wrap it all up. So we've also got Riley O'Brien this morning. Let's bring Riley in. Good morning, Riley. How are you?
Good morning, guys. I'm doing very well. Happy to be here. Been listening to the show all week, so it only felt right for me to jump in and join with Will and Eric.
So you're up early, man. What time is it over there?
Yeah, it's 6 a.m. I'm out here in Utah, so I think I'm a couple hours behind most of our listeners.
Yeah. We get a few people that jump in from all over the place, whether it's Panama or, the Philippines or hell, even Alaska at times. But yeah, that's early to be up, especially to watch a show, but also to participate. I appreciate you being part of it, man. And so let's just get it kicking. I guess, Riley, we haven't had a chance to really talk to you at all this week. We're after the loss, and I know we were trying to get you rolling, but you got the massive upgrades now with your equipment, and that's awesome. I'm glad to see it. So what was your initial knee-jerk reaction after we lost on Saturday night? I know we communicated a little bit, but could you believe what you were witnessing at the time? And I'm not trying to open up everybody's scabs this morning, but I guess we will for a minute.
No, I think it's cathartic. I think you have to do this, right? And I'll tell you, listening to your recap of the show was the first kind of step in that recovery process for me. We did the show, Will, a few days before the game, and I literally made the comment that of all the teams, and it's still true, of all the teams that we could have faced, Washington was the team that I wanted. I was so confident that the Lions were going to win that game.
Mm-hmm.
And it just had a feel from the start of the game, the Amik injury. I remember at one point, Gibbs scores a touchdown in the third quarter to make it 31-28. There's plenty of ball game left. You should be really confident at that point. But it just didn't feel like it was going to be happening. And so I tip my hat to Washington, man. They went in, they got the win. Heartbreaking way for the season to end, but I think I'm getting to that point where I'm able to look back and appreciate this season for what it was. Ultimately, the objective wasn't met, but it was a great season. But Saturday was a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it was. I know Eric and I have talked about it at length this week, but I had the feeling, when we went 3-and-out to start the game, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, that's not how you want to start off. You've got the most potent offense in the league. Everyone's healthy to a large degree. You're only missing one offensive lineman, and you go 3-and-out.
And they kicked it out of bounds. We started at the 40.
Everything was going wrong
Yeah.
from the jump. So, yeah. I'm glad we're trying to, just wrap it up. And honestly, I guess the first segment I'll talk about with NFL news. And I apologize. I was trying to put a poll up, and I guess I just threw a question up. So I'm going to put the poll up. We've heard that there's this friction that's been reported between Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. And this was prior to Ben leaving to Chicago, but now even more so that he's taken the Chicago job. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So I'm going to put this poll up. Do you believe in the friction? Do you think it exists? Or do you think that people are just trying to poke the bear here, stoke the flames, and cause drama? I see the note in there about my audio. There you go. I just turned it up. It should be better. I'm not sure why that's doing that. Again, it's Eric's fault. It's all Eric's fault.
Take one for the team, Eric.
Here we go. Echo auto gain control somehow got turned back on for the 6th time today. We'll make sure that stays off. There we go. We should be good now for the rest of the day. So how quickly the NFL changes, right? And how quickly everybody moves on. And so part of the schedule that I try to follow throughout the year is the NFL important dates. And I've mentioned this to a few people. I don't even know if a lot of people know this existed, as far as the dates for the NFL and what they do and when they do it. Everyone knows like the big 3 or 4, right? The Super Bowl, when the draft is, when opening week is, the start of training camp. Those are the ones that everybody pays attention to, but there's more. There's a lot more that goes on throughout the season, throughout the off season. The NFL is now 365. And if I were to tell you that, and this seems early to me, Eric, I don't remember, when did we go to the combine last year? Do you remember?
It was February, mid-February.
Was it mid-February?
End of February, beginning of March. It was, that was when we went to the combine.
Okay. I thought that the combine was a bit early, but the combine is on February 24th this year.
Yeah, it's about what it was last year, last week of February.
So to think that we are just a month away, exactly a month away from potentially looking at who's going to join the Detroit Lions for this upcoming season.
Mm-hmm.
That is how quickly things get turned around, and you're already off into, looking at the future. You've got the Pro Bowl game on February 2. You've got the Senior Bowl on February 1, which I'm hoping that I can go. Last year, I had tickets to it. As season ticket holders, we got tickets to it, but it's in Mobile. I don't know if I'm going to travel all the way to Alabama. I would love to go because I would love to see some of these seniors and hopefully get an opportunity to get a field pass. But that's how quickly that we move on. And on March 4th, that is the deadline for clubs to designate their franchise and or their transition tag players. And then the negotiating period beginning at 12 noon New York time on March 10th and ends at 3:59:59 on March 12th. That is when clubs are permitted to contact and enter into contract negotiations with the certified agents of players who become unrestricted free agents. Upon expiration of their 2024 contracts at 4 p.m. on March 12th, that is when they are allowed to start signing some deals. So again, we are just 6 weeks away, roughly, from having new free agents in Detroit. We are going to blink. It's going to be here. And we're going to get rolling right into it right away. So I have a lot of work to do in a very short amount of time, starting with free agents and then working into draft. We'll touch on a couple of mock drafts today. So there's been a couple that have been reported. Last year, Eric, I'd say, it was draft time. And I thought that this would be the year that we would get a defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
And what everyone's reporting so far, it seems like they're all in the same idea here that the Lions are going to target a defensive end in 2025. And it makes sense. Would you think that it makes sense? And Riley, after he answers, give us your opinion on it too.
After listening to Brad yesterday, he's going to take whatever. He's sticking to the plan. He's not going after specific needs. I think that's more of a free agent thing. I think in the draft, he just takes the best player available. That's all he does.
Yeah, he takes the best football player. And to his point yesterday, so a lot of people that watched Brad Holmes' interview yesterday or his presser, I don't know if they take away the same things that I take away. I really try to pay attention to it. And he does mention how he's not really changing anything. And it's always best player available, right?
Yep.
He does mention the needs or the holes, though. And he mentioned that with free agency. And if you notice during free agency last year, that is where he was kind of filling the holes. And whatever we identify as holes, it's going to be guys that we're losing, to free agency. It's going to be, guys that we want to upgrade. It's going to be depth positions. Those are the holes that he's trying to fill in free agency. And then come the draft, those are the guys that he's trying to turn into, players that are going to stick around with this organization for years, not just, 2, 3, 4 years, but hopefully a second contract. So Riley, same question to you. Do you think that it's defensive end this season in the draft?
I do. As far as what is today, January 24th. I think this time last year was, I just know as we got closer to the draft, I kind of started thinking, well, maybe they're going to go receiver, but we didn't know if they were going to stay put. Now that we have a little bit more draft ammunition with the Aaron Glenn hire, maybe they'll make some moves, but it's that roster roulette that you always talk about, Will, that's fascinating to see, because after they took Terrion Arnold last year, I was sure that the next pick was going to be a receiver. Well, it was another cornerback. So that told me that they've Brad Holmes viewed Ennis Rakestraw as a better corner than any receiver was a receiver that was left on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to look at, okay, well, you draft him in case Carlton's only here for 1 year. So it's just this constant shuffling the deck, kind of a verbose answer. I do think we're going to get a defensive lineman, an edge player probably in the draft, but I would say yes today, but who knows what they're going to have up their sleeve come April.
So Monday, I think, is when I'll officially start looking at free agency and draft. Now, I've already started, but there's going to be some things that are dropping today. Now that I have internet back, yesterday it took 4 hours to upload a video that was supposed to come out around noon, didn't come out until way later in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So I think Monday is going to be the day that I do that. And I see in here, a couple of questions. Peter Van Larhoven, why would Brad tell us what he's thinking? So Peter, I have to be honest. If you go back and watch every press conference from Brad Holmes between the draft, season ending, and season beginning, go write down his main points and then think about that season and go look at what he did in the draft. Everything he tells you, I promise you, it has come to fruition. He has not misguided us. I mean, so there's two ways to go about this, right? You can either put out a bunch of smoke and mirrors, and I'm sure they do that to a degree around draft time. But if you listen to Brad and what the organization's process is and the plan is, he has never wavered from that. He has always said it's best football player available that fits this team. And that's why he took Jack Campbell at 18 in last year's draft. It could have easily been, or 2 drafts ago, whatever it was. It could have easily been an edge rusher, right? Could have been a wide receiver. It could have been anybody else. Why an inside linebacker? Because that was the best football player that they felt fit that team at that time. So Brad doesn't do things conventionally. If anything, he is unconventional. If anything, Dan Campbell is unconventional as a head coach. Started this whole 4th down, 4th and go, right? The Dan Gambles. And now you're seeing what's happening in the league. Everyone is following suit, or a large majority of teams are starting to follow suit. And, all of the, let me not say all. A large portion of GMs that have gone under the radar as far as trying to stay hidden from what they're trying to say, anonymous, they come out and say that Brad Holmes is cocky. That the Lions are cocky by the way that they're drafting. They're cocky by what they're doing. Because he's not doing things like a normal GM would do. He's doing it, in my opinion, way above what anyone else has done. The level that Brad Holmes has put this team together has been unprecedented, in my opinion. I mean, you point to another team that has gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 3 short seasons, and then in a 4th season, you're back-to-back champs, 1 seed. You fail in the playoffs, but you look at this roster, it went from nothing to one of the best rosters in the league. And that's because of Brad Holmes consistently sticking to his plan and the plan that they identified when they sat down with Sheila and Chris Spielman in 2020. So he tells us everything. At least that's what I've noticed. I've spent an exorbitant amount of time listening and re-listening to everything that they've said. And it's just all come true. A large majority of it has. So let's get to a few more important dates here. So clubs that hired a new head coach after the end of 2024. So anyone that fired a head coach and hired a new head coach this season for 25 on April 7th is when they get to begin their OTAs or their off-season workout programs. And then April 16th is the deadline for clubs to time test, visit, interview, or conduct physical examination with any draft-eligible player. So by the 16th of April, we should know, at least by then, where teams are headed. And at least by then, all of the, in-person visits, the 30-30, that will be coming in to visit with the Lions if they bring in 30. We should have a good idea of what they're looking at. And then that's another thing. So kind of going on Peter Van Laarhoven's question here, or statement. Go back and look at the guys that Brad Holmes brought in every year for the draft. How much smoke and mirrors was there really? There wasn't any. At least not a lot, because he brought in guys that he planned on drafting. Especially go back and look at the 2023 draft or the 2022 draft. Just about, everyone that he brought in fit the same narrative as to what he drafted, that season. So, and there was 5 players that he brought in that he drafted. Might have been more, actually. So deadline for clubs to exercise a 5th-year option is May 1st. Now, yesterday, Brad Holmes obviously said a lot, and he maybe said a little. And so let's get back to, I guess, what Brad Holmes said yesterday that is kind of this season wrap-up for him and kind of putting everything into this, picture-perfect scenario for 2025. I got to sign back in again. I don't know why I got to keep signing in.
Just as you're saying that, Will, it's got to be like one of the more refreshing aspects of Detroit Lions fandom is just how transparent Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are. It's authentic, it's genuine. Call it cocky. I would say they're just very convicted in what they're doing.
I would say so. I mean, Eric, what do you think? Do you think that Brad Holmes is fairly transparent?
Oh, extremely. What he set out to do and what he says he's going to do is exactly what he does every single year. The thing about Brad Holmes, people saying, didn't Martin Mayhew always take the best player available in the draft? No, he didn't. Brad Holmes does, though. Brad Holmes took Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12, who was the best player available. Everyone else was like, oh, that's horrible. You don't take a running back in the first round. You don't take him number 12 overall. Well, you know what? This year, Brad Holmes has changed the narrative on that. Because guess who's going to go number 1 or number 2 this year? A running back.
You think number 1 or number 2?
It's going to be really high.
I don't think it's one. I don't think it's going to be 1 or 2, but I'd say maybe in the top right now, maybe in the top 15.
Yeah, first round.
Even top 5. That kid from Boise State, he's going early. You watch. It's going to be the Jahmyr Gibbs effect.
So you know what's crazy though, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but when we selected Jahmyr Gibbs, I was literally in my truck driving somewhere. I don't know where I was going. I think I was going to Lowe's or something. And I just had this thought, and I'm like, I just listened to what Brad Holmes was saying. I'm looking at the roster. I'm looking at what we just did. I'm like, we're taking a running back. We got pick 6. And I said, nah, we're not picking there. No one takes a running back in the first round that early. If we don't get Witherspoon, which I think he went at 5 to Seattle, I said, we're trading 6 for 12, which I think was with Arizona. And we're going to take Jahmyr Gibbs because I expected Bijan Robinson to get picked up prior to number 12. And that's exactly what happened. And I put it all on the record that day, well before the draft. Everyone thought I was nuts. But you know what? I should send that to Mel Kiper. I should send that to Fowler. I should send it to Pelissero. I should send it to all these guys to say, look, you guys missed it. And Brad Holmes knew what he was doing. And now look, we've got one of the best running backs in the NFL. Because Brad Holmes breaks down the norms, right? He's breaking down walls, right? And then he's putting a wall up on the offensive line. So he doesn't do things conventionally, and it's for a reason. He's trying to outsmart the NFL and put his team in a position to to win football games. And that's what he's done, and that's what they're doing. So anyway, yesterday, we're getting back to work, right? And that's what Brad Holmes said. Like, there's no time for spilled milk, right? You can't cry over spilled milk. You can't cry these guys back to health or whatever he was saying there. Obviously, his quote was about the loss, that it was humbling, but I don't allow it to discredit all of the positives that we were able to accomplish this season. Franchise record of wins and another division title, and being undefeated on the road, being undefeated in the division, and call it what it is, though. Historically tight division race this year. The whole organization had a hand in it, and I thank the players enough for all of their sacrifice and strain and commitment and their response through the adverse moments. He also wanted to thank the fans and said that, we upheld our end of the bargain, and that he wishes the team could have done more for them. Look, they did plenty. Like, we had a crazy fun season. Yeah, it did not finish where a lot of us thought that we should be finishing this year. But I like his approach here. There is no crying. It's, pick yourself up and get back to work. There's nothing else to do. So that's what we're going to do. That is the right attitude. I think it sends the right message that, yep, we fell short, but we're not going to sit here and just wallow in our sorrows. We're going to put this thing back together, and we're going to be right back in the dance next year. So, Eric, I'll start with you first. How did you feel after listening to Brad Holmes' messages yesterday?
Yeah, for Brad, this is par for the course. And, I think, like I said before, that Dan is, changing the NFL and the way they view fourth down. I think Brad's doing the same through the draft. He is making other GMs question whether you should draft a running back in the top 15, where no one was doing that before.
Yeah.
Hardly ever. Bijan Robinson was the only guy that went above Jahmyr Gibbs, and Bijan Robinson was supposed to be the next Barry Sanders. He was supposed to be the next, he was supposed to be the next it guy. And look back now, who's having the better production? If you had to pick between Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, I'd pick Gibbs 100 times out of 100.
Oh, I would too. I mean, you can't replace a generational player. I mean, he has been so durable. Now, I'm sure that his body is just beat the F up right now. Mm-hmm. And he's, he's probably feeling a little bit better after a week off, but it's going to take him a few weeks to feel, absolutely prime again. But man, he went through it this season. He got pounded a few times pretty hard, and he just bounces right back up. I think he stood on the, on the turf for maybe 10 seconds after, what was that Minnesota hit? It was Van Ginkel that took him out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he took that huge shot, and he was on the ground for maybe 10 seconds and just popped up like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm ready to go. Yep. That's amazing to me that, before we had DeAndre Swift, that if you sneezed on the guy, he would fall over. So it's incredible that Brad puts the time and the energy in to find the right players, but then to also find the right players that are fairly durable. But to his credit yesterday, Brad wanted to make sure that he was very clear about the most important topic, which is injuries. And you can't, it's hard to sustain injuries as it is in the NFL. It's hard to go through the NFL without any injuries. I don't know how the Buffalo Bills have been able to do it. But what he said is, the process isn't going to change. In last season, we lost 5 defensive ends. And I put out a video yesterday talking about it because I was so vindicated by the fact that what he was saying is exactly what I've been trying to preach this year, that, look, at some point, too much is too much. And it's going to catch up to you at some point. I think that if there would have been some better play calling in last Saturday's game, we still could have won that game. Injuries or not, I think that we had the right mentality, which was making guys play way above their level. And we had a good mixture of veterans and leaders on that team that were kind of making up, for the difference there in the type of player that we had on the field. But again, to what he said yesterday is there's nobody in the NFL that has a 6th or a 7th or an 8th effective, and use the word effective, pass rusher. They just don't exist. But more importantly, they don't really exist anywhere in the NFL. Most teams have 4. You have 2 starters, 2 backups. That's it. And then you've got 5 defensive linemen. You've got, your three starters, or your 2 starters in the 3-4, or your 3 starters in the 4-3, and then your ends. How are you going to replace edge rushers throughout the season when they don't exist anyway? They don't exist in the NFL. And I thought the most important thing that he said was the starters, forget about them. None of them were available for him to do anything with. And I thought that it was about time that he had said something that, to kind of squash all of these flames, right? Put out all these flames where, people are saying that he's failed. He failed this team, and he didn't fail this team. He tried. He tried to bring in some guys. They weren't available. And he made the comment that there was a handful of guys. Remember, he went from like the beginning of the season, it's here, and then it's here when you're looking for, guys to add to this roster. And at the trade deadline, he had a handful of guys. And the one thing that I picked up on, this is why I listened intently, is that he thought that out of the handful, maybe there was a couple of guys that were, could start. So that means that they were not starters. They were rotational guys. The first guy that I spoke about last year is Zadarius Smith. I think that was with, who did I have on during that time? I can't remember now.
You're asking about like a guest that you had on?
Yeah, I had a guest on that morning.
I don't remember.
Oh, it was Jared. It was Jared Eisenlohr. We were talking about potential, additions to the team at the trade deadline, and Zadarius Smith was one of the first names that I spoke about. And it's funny that it happened, right? It's identifying the right talent, the right guy, the right fit. He was all of that. Yeah, he wasn't really a starter. He was a good rotational player, a little bit on the older side. But again, to Brad's credit, nobody was available. And let me ask you guys, let me get your honest opinion here. Riley, I'll start with you, then we'll go to Eric. If you have every first round pick for 25, 26, and 27, I think you can only go out 3 seasons for picks in a trade. I think that's the max. Might only be 2 seasons. Would you be willing to give up 2 first-round picks this season and possibly a second-round pick or a third-round pick to go with that for Myles Garrett or Max Crosby, and then bring in a $25 to $30 million contract? Do you think that makes any sort of sense when you look at, how Brad Holmes does his work, how he drafts, how important those first-round picks have become, and the types of players that we have on the team now? Look at every first-round pick that we brought in and who they are. Would you be willing to waste the future, which does 2 things? You now have an expensive contract and no picks. What if that player gets hurt? Well, you don't have all these picks now that you brought in to fill the pipeline. You don't have really good, high-quality candidates that you drafted to fill the pipeline. But you've got to pay that salary no matter what because he's under contract. And if that player's hurt, he's not playing. But then the next year, when you're thinking, you know what, I'd love to offload this contract and trade that player, you're stuck because you don't have any picks, right? You don't have any picks, and who's going to pay you what you paid for that player a year later? So in your opinion, would you trade 2 first-round picks and possibly a third this year and next year to go after one of the top-tier defensive ends?
Absolutely not. We've seen the construction. Brad Holmes talked about this last year after the NFC Championship game. When he did his same end-of-season press conference, he said every move that we've made, and then he pointed out every move that we don't make is by design. And I think that's the correlation between everything that I've listened to here on this show is the way that they're building the roster. He mentioned yesterday, you cannot be a prisoner of the moment. Yeah, I would love to have Max Crosby on the roster. You'd love to have Myles Garrett on the roster, but not at the expense of taking away what is probably the most valuable asset Brad Holmes has, which is the draft capital. As just like you said as well, then you have to look at the contracts. I'm a Utah Jazz fan in basketball, and a few years ago, for anybody that pays attention to basketball, the Utah Jazz had the number 1 seed in the NBA. Had Donovan Mitchell, had Rudy Gobert, had this great regular season team. They could not win in the playoffs, and they had to blow it up because they had no more money. They had no more assets. They had no draft picks. So they traded Rudy Gobert. They traded Donovan Mitchell for a bunch of draft capital to start over. That team had reached its limit. What Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell do not want to do is put a cap or a ceiling on this team, which is what you would do, sacrificing draft capital for the more immediate gain. This team's good enough to win a Super Bowl with the best players that they currently have. You just need to supplement it. So, no, I would not.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm in the same boat. I don't think Brad would ever mortgage the future. And listen, what that would say is that Brad is not capable of finding a generational talent at whatever position, edge position, whatever it is, in the draft. So I'm pretty sure Brad is pretty confident in his drafting strategy and his drafting ability and his eye for talent. So he's drafted one edge so far, and he did pretty darn good with Aiden Hutchinson. So if he drafts another one, don't be surprised if the next guy's just as good or better than Aiden Hutchinson.
And Darius Smith, did he not like fill that role? He produced, I would say, like at a grade A level for what you could have realistically expected for him, right? He was a perfect trade target. That's why Will targeted him. That's why he was the first name I remember hearing Will say the day after Hutch was injured. And that was a perfect addition. It just didn't work out because we had all the other injuries, and then Washington came and punked us. But those are the moves that you make. And I trust Brad Holmes more than I've trusted any GM of any of my favorite sports teams throughout my life.
So I just put up another Q&A. Very simply, would you trade 2 times first and a third for a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby this season? Let me know if you guys can see it, because for some reason we don't even have any votes yet, which was kind of odd. We should have votes already.
It's a question. It's not a poll.
Oh.
It doesn't have a yes or a no. It just says, would you trade?
Oh, what the hell happened?
See, he was testing us.
Yeah.
Hold on here.
I like that. I like the polls. You guys did a great one yesterday. I think it was, what was it? Who's going to have more success? Ben Johnson in Chicago or Aaron Glenn in New York? I was like, that's a good one.
Yeah. I honestly think it'll be Aaron Glenn.
See,
yeah, I think so too. I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. All right, there we go. There's a poll. My apologies. So
I differ from you guys on that.
I believe that we'll come back to that, Riley. I believe that, there's a reason why you don't give up your first round picks. I mean, that's your future. Now, I developed something I've been working on for 2 years now called roster roulette. And so far it's been fairly accurate. It's a simple way to look at, it's building a funnel, right? You have starters on your team now, everybody that you've drafted so far. So then you have to look at it from a funnel perspective. I've got one guy that's coming up that's going to get an extension, a large contract. So how do I supplement my team? How do I make sure that I have sustainability at the position? And it's a very simple math problem. You bring in a rookie. You bring in a rookie that you get 5 years with that is on a low impact contract, and that offsets that extension that you're about to give Aiden Hutchinson when he does get it. Now, I don't believe Aiden's going to get an extension this year. They'll pick up the 5th, and if he's playing phenomenal, throughout training camp and he looks the same, then they would probably entertain an extension at that point, only if it makes sense. But the other thing, too, that I think that a lot of us forget, right, is the cap is only so big. So we handed out 130 million to 5 guys this last season, 4 or 5 guys. Panay, Amon-Ra, Aleem, Jared. Who am I missing?
St. Brown.
No, I said Amon-Ra. That's 4.
Who else?
Well, we brought in Carlton, right? Effectively paid him $10 million this year because they renegotiated. We brought in DJ Reader. I think his worked out to about $15 million. So between 2 high-profile players, you're only paying $25 million for 2 high-profile players. There's a reason why I said in the beginning of the offseason, Brad Holmes is going to target second-tier players. By second tier, it's not the athlete, it's not the player, it's the contract. Mm-hmm. So they got to fit into a mold of what can I afford, how much can I spend on that position, And if you're a nerd like me that loves stats and analytics, yeah, I go look at the percentages of every single team. So when I bring information forward, it's not my narrative. It's not just my opinion. It is, but it isn't. I go and study every team out there. What's the percentage of cap that they're spending on this position? Okay, what do we have on our team right now? What is that average? How much do we have right now for the Lions? So that gives me an idea of, okay, we've spent 5% of the cap on linebackers. I know it's more than that, but I'm just throwing out a number. And the average in the NFL, let's say it's 10% of the cap. Okay, well, we've got 5% of the cap to work with, which means, okay, we can grab one guy in the draft, we can grab one guy in free agency, and we could spend another 15, 18 million. It fits. That's the model that I started with roster roulette to kind of give me an idea of the percentage, how much money they're going to spend percentage-wise on each position, and then looking for sustainability across the team and how long is this team going to be relevant if they continue to fill the pipeline, drop one out of the funnel and one in, one out of the funnel and one in. You got to keep it rolling. We're already getting into Aiden's 4th season and Jameson Williams' 4th season. We blinked and it's already here. So at some point, he's going to get this extension. You have to have the guy to fill, because I doubt that you're going to be able to go to a 3rd contract with those guys. It's going to be too expensive, and you're going to have other guys in that pipeline by that time that are also going to be coming up for an extension. So when you give Aiden an extension this season and you draft his eventual replacement, then in 4 more years or 3 more years, actually, that guy's going to get an extension. Where's Aiden's contract at that point? So he'll be 3 years into an extension. Actually, he'll be 2 years into an extension, because the 5th year will still be his 5th year option unless they totally reconstruct the contract, which usually doesn't happen. So you have to look at it from that perspective, that at some point you have no more money. We are lucky to have about 55, 60 million, whatever it is right now. And that number is going to drop because we're going to have some dead cap, some injury settlements, some bonuses, and some other things that are all going to come due this year. I just don't know what that number is yet. So it's going to drop.
You'd say Carlton Davis was an awesome signing, right?
Yeah.
He got hurt, but when he was on the field, I'll never forget that Houston game especially. And he was an awesome player. But you set it up to where if you don't re-sign him for exactly what you're talking about, well, guess who's going on the field next year in that spot? Theoretically, anyway. Rakestraw, that guy's in line. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, he's in line. I mean, I don't know where he fits just yet. He's definitely not a Carlton Davis. He's a hell of a backup to Terry and Arnold. I want to address something real quick though. John Desage says the cap's going up 10 million next year. No. Has anybody seen that? It's going way up. It's going up way more than 10 million.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Year over year, it's somewhere between 20
10%.
and 30 million. Yeah, so we're looking at
10%.
Yeah, so that says the 2025 salary cap is projected to be between 265 and 275 million.
What is it right now? 255?
Let's see. 2024 is 242.
And that was the biggest increase we've had in more than a decade. I think it was 30 million.
It was just because it went from 224 to 242. So almost 20 million, 18 million it went up last year.
I thought it went up way more than that. I thought it was effectively 30 million.
But the league has had record profits this season. So it is bound to go up again. Because
it's always going to go up. So the average increase. Okay, so here it is. The NFL salary cap increased by 30.6 million to 255.4 million per team for the 2024 season. This was a record 13.6% increase from the 2023 salary cap of 224.8 million. So I don't know what numbers you have, but 255 minus 224, that's 30 million, right? And it's 13.6. But if you go and look at the salary caps before that, it would average somewhere between 8 and 10% every year. You can guarantee it's always going to be in that range. But to Eric's point, great point, record numbers this year, especially for the Lions, but across the league.
Yeah, across the league.
And the big deal with Netflix and the big deal, that with Amazon in its second season. So there's a bunch of money that's probably going to get added. If it doesn't go up at least 25 million, I would be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I'm expecting the salary cap to be no less than 280 this year.
Yeah, within another season, we're going to be looking at a $300 million cap number per season. So these contracts, they're coming and they're tolling, and you're going to have to pay these 4 players. What is it? $150 million for one season for 4 players. It's doable. It's going to be doable because you're getting all this new money.
Yeah, and when you look at bringing in, so to my point about wasting your draft picks and then bringing in a guy that costs you $25 million a year. So are you willing to totally give up the salary cap increase for 2025 to one player? I don't think it's feasible. And I know we're way off topic this morning, but I don't think it's feasible for a couple of reasons. When you look at Jared Goff's contract, that was the one thing that I kept saying. I was way in advance. I put a video out about Jared Goff probably 5 months before he got his deal, and I called him the $50 million arm. I said he's going to get $50 million or more, guaranteed. Everyone, again, thought I was nuts, but he got it. And the way that I kept, I guess, framing the reason why it's okay and it's going to happen and it's not going to hurt, the Lions' salary cap is you have to look again at the percentage. What is the percentage-based cap that you're spending on quarterbacks? Look around the league. What's the average? And so when you look at the increase that you're about to get, which we got 30 million last year, 25 or more million this year, it offsets that quarterback, right? It offsets that salary. So now you're kind of back to net zero, this season, if you were to pay Jared Goff an extra 25 million, but I think his contract this year is still right around 30, 32 million or something. So they have room to get extensions done this year. Let me move into that since we're talking about money. Kirby Joseph. Now, Brad was kind of asked and kind of dismissed, I guess, a little bit when asked about, extensions for this season. And, I guess the question was, in addition to drafted players on expiring deals like Derek Barnes, Levi Onwuzurike, and obviously the Lions have decisions to make on a handful of 2022 draft picks, right? Aiden, J-Mo. They're obviously eligible for extensions, which you guys know I don't think that's going to happen. But you also have all-pro safety Kirby Joseph. And based on Brad Holmes' comments yesterday, it doesn't sound like anything is imminent right now. But here's his quote. We are working through all of that. Again, it's not always in our control. We might have our plans and processes, but it takes 2 people to get something done. That's not a negative comment. We haven't got into those intense dialogues yet, but we have our philosophy. We have our process, and we'll see how it goes. To me, that sounds like we're willing to talk, right? We have our philosophy and process, which is, if it's anything like my roster roulette, I understand what he's saying. They have percentages they need to fit. They have a timeline for when they're going to add these players. They have a process for how they're going to fill out the roster. Kirby Joseph may not be back in Detroit after his last season. I think he's under contract for next year. Is he not?
No.
He's not. He is a free agent this year?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me. So he may not be back. And I'll give you my pros and cons when we get to that segment someday, but it may not be as bad of a deal if he isn't here. But I will say that after what he just did, a lot of fans are going to say, how can you not bring him back? He just had a record year. But then again, that will probably never happen again. It's very unlikely for it to happen. It doesn't. Most safeties or corners in that position don't have repeated years like that. And that's nothing against Kirby. But then you have to weigh, how much is he going to want? He's going to want a boatload after that season. That may not fit the model. And you're not just going to overpay because he had one great season.
That's the prisoner of the moment that Brad Holmes is saying yesterday.
Yes.
They're not going to be a victim of, right? You can't. What he's saying is, obviously, we love Kirby Joseph. He drafted him. That's his guy. He led the league in pick. But what you cannot do is overpay somebody because of good vibes. You know what I mean? You have to remove the emotion.
Yeah, so real quick, if you guys can get out and smash the like button, we'll get these ads turned off. We've got, 140 or so watching. We just need to get these likes up above 75. Hurry up, smash it. We'll get the ads off so that you guys can just watch the rest of the show without ads. I hate ads too.
You guys, I goofed up. I misspoke. Kirby Joseph is under contract for 2025.
I thought so. Okay.
I thought because I was like, man, that I felt like I blinked and he's already up. But yeah,
I was thinking he was Brad's first draft.
He was 2022, was it not? Yeah. So, but that doesn't mean that he's not up for an extension, right? Or you have to also look. He wasn't a first round pick, so he doesn't have a fifth year. He doesn't have a fifth year option.
Yeah.
So this is his last season. He's gonna want an increase in his pay. Maybe he'll hold out. But to Brad's credit and what his last statement was where was it?
Well, they don't have to be in a hurry.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't. But I mean, at some point, you're going to have to get it done before the season or you're not. Because if you don't get it done before the season, he could hold out. So here's what he said. He's one that's proved he's a Detroit Lion. He fits our culture. It's hard to find ball hawk guys that will tackle how he does. Takes out knees, right? I think that's what makes him unique. Again, we haven't had any intense dialogue about that yet, but obviously you want to keep the good players here. So to me, that shows the transparency part of Brad, where he obviously wants to keep Kirby around. He fits everything that this team is about. He also said that, that's on the docket in terms of to be looked at and discussed when talking about Hutchinson and Williams, that we know where he's at from an eligibility standpoint. Look, he's an all-pro player. I don't know how you don't make the Pro Bowl. He's talking about Kirby here with 9 interceptions, whatever that is, but he's an all-pro player. He's another one that's gotten better and better. And you know what, to Brad's point, what does he always say about the players that he drafts? Do you guys know the one thing that he's kind of coined about his draftees? It's a timeline. When to judge his players. What does he always say?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years. Well, this is Kirby's what? Third year. All pro.
It's
so
transparency you're talking about, because he could easily just say, we'll keep all that information in house and just move on to the next question.
Well, yeah, but the point I'm trying to make here is Brad knows that when he brings these guys in, he knows where they should fit and where they should be year 1, 2, or 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's giving everybody a 3-year window if you were drafted in the later middle rounds. If you're drafted in the first or second round, it's probably a 2-year window, but still don't judge my guys or evaluate my guys until year 3. Levi Onwuzurike and Josh Paschal, you would say, had their best season as a Detroit Lion so far, especially Levi.
Mm-hmm.
And it just fits into his mold. Expiring deals, Carlton Davis and Kevin Seitler. I mean, obviously, I think I would be lying to you if I said that I did not have reservations about Carlton Davis because he missed 23% of his average games. There are eligible games that he was able to play. And that happened again this year. But a broken jaw, I mean, these are things that you just can't, you can't write a weirder story of what happened to the Lions this season. So I'm not going to paint the picture that Carlton Davis is just an injury-prone guy, even though he kind of is. This season, man, he was having a hell of a season, probably his best season since his Super Bowl season. And perfect fit for this team, but he's going to want a boatload of money. He was about a $15 million year guy coming off his final year of his contract. I think we traded away a 3rd-round pick for 1 season's worth of work. And see, that's when I look at trading picks for guys. Do you know what we could have done with that 3rd-round pick? I mean, we could have grabbed, go look at all the 3rd-round safeties and corners that have been taken. Who could we have taken in the last couple of seasons with a 3rd-round pick that could have been that next Carlton Davis?
Mm-hmm.
The problem was we needed a veteran now.
Exactly right. Because now they know Glenn's gone. They know they're going to get that 3rd-round pick back. Not to say they shouldn't have used it, but the best, highest usage of that asset at that time, yeah, I agree, was Carlton Davis. He surprised me. And there wasn't one of those free agent signings that I felt personally underwhelmed. Amik Robertson, I mean, dude, fantastic fit. He knows exactly who he's bringing into this team.
So when you look at a roster that, has a bunch of young guys, still a very young team, you had to have a guy like Carlton that could lead Terry and Arnold, that could lead Ennis Rakestraw. You bring in a guy like Amik Robertson that can also lead and be part of, this leadership group within the DB room. Kirby Joseph, one of the elder statesmen in the group, Ifeatu Melifonwu, one of the elder statesmen in the group, had a rough year. So when I look at going forward, well, we have a Meek this season. As much as I would love to say Carlton would come back, and he probably would, I don't think the money's going to be right enough that maybe, and this is just my early predictions, that maybe Carlton ends up moving on. Meek slides into that veteran role, and Brad probably doubles down again in this draft and grabs, or not doubles down, but he probably grabs another safety or corner in this draft. You've got Brian Branch, who's going to be entering his third season. So you have some veteran leadership right now. But I still think we need another number one corner that we can groom. And if you have a Meek, he's inside outside. He can do both. And if you have another one that you can groom, again, it's roster roulette. Put one in the funnel. When one drops out like Carlton, you have another guy to come up. And you've now brought down your cap liabilities so that your team stays sustainable for the future. I mean, it doesn't make any more perfect sense than that. I mean, these are all things that GMs are thinking about. And I guess, to be honest, to be very clear, the only reason why I talk about this stuff and think that I have a fairly good grasp on it, it's kind of what I did throughout my career, was high-level executive type negotiations, and it fits. I mean, it's all the same. It's just a different product, right? A different set of circumstances. It's all the same negotiation. I don't care if you're selling RVs, or if you're selling houses, or if you're trying to, acquire football players. It's all the same negotiation. It's all the same process. You just have to fit it into your model and make it make sense. Is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Does it fit our team? Does it not fit our team? Does it help our future? Does it not? So, I mean, same thing with a house, right? Am I going to buy a house that's going to depreciate or appreciate? Same thing with a football player. I want a football player that's going to appreciate. I don't want him to depreciate. Otherwise, I'm not going to spend as much money on a depreciating asset. But I want a guy that's going to increase his value, which is a guy that you bring in the first round or the second round or the third round. It's all about your development too. And maybe we'll head there next. So developing. We've got some new coaches coming in. The Lions coaching news so far has been bleak. Hasn't been a whole lot going on. There's been two guys that we can talk about. Number one, let's talk about Kacy Rodgers. Eric, do you have anything on Kacy Rodgers this morning?
Oh, I did. Let me get down there. So Kacy Rodgers came over from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he was the D-line coach, I believe. Let me get over here. Whoa, wrong thing. But anyway,
he was the defensive coordinator for Tampa, was he not?
Let's see. After losing 3 members of the coaching staff to other franchises this week, the Detroit Lions decide to do a little poaching of their own. Less than 24 hours after defensive line coach Terrell Williams left for the New England Patriots, the Lions are naming Tampa Bay Buccaneers run game coordinator defensive line coach Kacy Rodgers as his replacement. So Rodgers joins Detroit after spending the last 10 years with Todd Bowles, serving as his defensive coordinator with the New York Jets, and as his defensive line coach and run game coordinator in Tampa Bay. Campbell and Rodgers shared a history, having worked together from 2008 to 2014 with the Miami Dolphins. So there's your Campbell connection. And one really cool thing is that Rodgers here was a hot commodity during this hiring cycle, and he had interviews lined up with a bunch of other people, a bunch of other teams. And guess what one of the other teams was?
Let me guess, the Bears?
The Green Bay Packers.
Oh. So
once again, we swoop in and we take somebody that the Packers really wanted. And I saw a post from the Packers cheese or something on Twitter, and they just went off about us stealing another coach or another entity person that they wanted on their team really bad.
Well, hold on here. I will say this. Everything that I've read about Kacy so far has been great.
Yeah.
What I do like is obviously you do have the Campbell connection. Okay, he does have a lot of experience with one of the best defensive minds, which is Todd Bowles. And he's been around Todd Bowles for a very long time. The connection with Dan Campbell works. But the one thing that I have a question on, though, is I'm pretty positive that the Tampa Bay Bucks run a 3-4, if I'm not mistaken. Does anybody know in the chat? Because I haven't looked.
I don't know what he would have ran with the Jets as well when he was a coordinator.
I mean, I'm pretty positive it's a 3-4. I mean, I guess I can just look. So they had their outside linebackers coach, Larry Foote. Obviously, it's Coach Poach, right? I mean, this is part of my new topic this week is Coach Poach. Well, not only are we poaching a coach from Tampa, but now that coach is poaching another coach from Tampa in Larry Foote potentially. And it kind of makes sense, you know, when you want to bring guys. We had this conversation yesterday, Eric, when we thought, you know, okay, it's kind of weird that positional coaches are coming in. Typically, you want to get a D coordinator and then see who fits that D coordinator style. So it kind of makes me think maybe they are going to bring in a guy or level up a guy, elevate a guy internally. Because why would you bring in all these positional coaches without having a D coordinator? So it makes me believe that the internal option is coming from, or for the defensive coordinators coming from inside Detroit already, is what I'm thinking.
Yep.
I don't know that I've seen any news yet of any D coordinators having interviews. I don't know that the Lions are going to post anything about potential interviews other than, you know, they posted about Larry Foote. I mean, just hearing about Kacy Rodgers, we had no idea that he was even getting interviewed. At least I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
You just saw the announcement, right?
What's that?
You just saw the announcement, like, and that's the first thing, you know, I did. I start looking at, it looks like they run a 3-4 defense, but in Tampa.
Oh, so it is verified 3-4?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Does that mean that the Lions are going to switch over to more of a 3-4 style of defense? If you bring in a bunch of guys that are well-versed in the 3-4, I'm just going to answer it. The answer should be no. If they can coach a 3-4, they can coach a 4-3.
Exactly.
These guys are extremely intelligent. I'm not worried about them changing the defensive style. Now, if you remember Aaron Glenn, his thing was going to a 1.5 gap style of defensive front instead of a single gap coverage, you know, for these guys. Maybe they do something different. Maybe they don't. Maybe they bring in some looks that are a 3-4, which is what I was begging for this year, was we need a couple of 3-4 looks where we can, you know, have three guys on the defensive line and get broader and wider in the middle of the defense that will shut down the run, but it'll also help in the mid-tier pass game. So maybe we see some new looks, you know, bringing in a guy that's well-versed in the 3-4. And I think that we do have some personnel that, you know, are able to fit that mold too. And the linebackers is really the key to a 3-4. We don't really have the linebackers to run a 3-4. So it'd be interesting to see if Brad Holmes starts taking some outside linebackers in the draft, you're going to have your answer. I think that we need one anyway, but if he's taking more or bringing in more free agents, then I think the answer is, yep, we're going to be making a little bit more of a change to a 3-4 defense. You can still run man out of it, but I guess sight unseen, man. It'd be interesting to see what these guys do. Any thoughts, Riley, on Kacy Rodgers or the Larry Foote news?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty well heralded. He wasn't somebody, I mean, I wasn't familiar with him before, but yeah, it's going to feel so good. We knew that these changes were coming with Ben Johnson, with Aaron Glenn, and you kind of go through the sting of the loss of the season and then losing those guys. But I think you and I will talked about it the other night. Now it's going to go through that turn where we're going to get back. I can't wait for the press conference when we're hiring our new defensive coordinator, our new offensive coordinator, and then you start taking shape on things and getting on ideas to how it's going to look. But from everything that I can see, Kacy Rodgers seems like a great hire. And then if you do bring in Larry Foote, they're continuing in that mold of former players, right? Coaching, and that's proven to be successful for Dan Campbell and the coaching tree that he's clearly started.
Okay, so Another thing that comes along with coaches is players, right? So you have the coach poach, and then you have your new coordinators poaching coaches. What about players from other teams? And I'm going to come back to that topic in a minute because for some reason, my research is missing. I've got to bring it back up. But what I'd like to do, Eric, is what do you have right now that you'd like to go over this morning? I don't care if it's Lions news, NFL news, whatever. What topic do you want to go over?
I want to touch on Larry Foote a little bit. Okay. So Larry Foote played for the Detroit Lions in 2009, and he was only here for one season. I really wanted a Larry Foote jersey, and I never got one. I remember wanting one really bad, and then by the time I went to get one, he wasn't a player anymore, So Larry Foote, his contract is over in Tampa, but the Buccaneers would really like him back. Foote was a Detroit native, a standout linebacker for the University of Michigan from 99 to 2001. So a lot of you might remember him from that. And as an NFL player, Foote was a 2-time Super Bowl winner with the Pittsburgh Steelers and even spent one season with the Lions in 2009. His coaching career dates back to 2015, his first year after retiring as a player. He spent his first 4 years with the Arizona Cardinals, coaching linebacker unit before jumping to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he's been since 2019. In those first 3 years, he was the team's outside linebacker coach, then transitioning to the inside linebackers coach in 2022, while also being the team's pass game coordinator. So he had a couple of roles, and that's kind of a theme here where Foote had 2 different jobs. So he was the pass game coordinator and the linebackers coach. And then you have Kacy, Rodgers, who was the run game coordinator and the defensive line coach. So you're getting guys that have multiple roles. They're not doing just one role with the team as an assistant. So they're taking on some extra stuff. And hey, this guy might be the guy. So don't be surprised if Larry Foote gets hired as the defensive coordinator. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I think it's kind of weird to me, right? So was Larry Foote, what was his job in Tampa? I forget already.
He was the linebackers coach and passing game coordinator.
And Kacy Rodgers had experience as a D coordinator in the NFL already. I think it's kind of weird that Kacy wouldn't be the D coordinator, but Larry Foote has a potential to be the coordinator and leapfrog Kacy Rodgers. It's kind of a weird dynamic, but
that happens sometimes.
I guess it's not a bad thing, because if you've got guys that have a wealth of experience, again, you're filling the pipeline just like for the players, for your coaches. You've got guys that are multiverse talents in what they can do. And if you've got multiple guys that are all great at doing the same thing, I mean, that only helps you. You get multiple, different types of perspectives on a game plan. It helps open your eyes, and I think that's great that the Lions are doing that. I think Larry Foote could make a good impression in Detroit. I mean, we'll be finding out soon enough. Yeah. What do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I think with that, Kacy Rodgers has been in the league for a long time. And you, Will, I've heard you talk about it in your professional life. I've heard you literally say, when you've trained people, you tell them, what? I don't want you to try to be me. I want you to try to be better than me. So it might be a situation where he's happy to be in this role, and he's trying to help propel, Larry Foote, if that is what ends up being the case there. I guess we'll find out. We talked about it a month ago when I was on the show. If you are drafted to this team, I mean, you got to feel so good that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell wanted you. I cannot wait to find out who these new hires are going to be. Nothing's going to be guaranteed, but I see no reason why we wouldn't be every bit as excited as Bears fans are to get Johnson and Jets fans are to get Aaron Glenn. I'm excited and optimistic, whether that's Larry Foote or whoever it ends up being. But maybe that's kind of the thought process there. Maybe Rodgers isn't looking to be a defensive coordinator.
Interesting take. So the Lions did bring in a receiver yesterday. I believe he was signed. Was it a futures contract? I think he was signed to a futures contract.
Yeah.
But Ronnie Bell. So the Lions signed another former Michigan athlete, right? Receiver Ronnie Bell. Now, this one's kind of interesting to me because I felt that he slipped in the draft last year. I wasn't high on Ronnie Bell, but I did feel that he slipped quite a bit. I mean, I was more, we need some taller, speedier wide receivers that can really spread the field and hit the boundary. But Ronnie Bell was drafted by the 49ers, number 253 overall in 2023. He appeared in all 17 games as a rookie, but he was only targeted 13 times, and he pulled down 6 catches for 68 yards and 3 scores. He saw some light work on special teams as well. He saw 13 snaps there. I think it's just kind of a weird dynamic for him because he goes to a team that, it had their playmakers. Last season, where specifically, they had their playmakers, and he didn't really get a chance to crack the roster. He was in all 17 games, but he really didn't have a chance to shine. And that may be the biggest reason why he did not have a quick, or good early career with the 49ers. But we're talking pick number 253. The Lions absolutely stole this kid away and have now signed him. So 6 foot, 190 pounds, obviously fits right into that slot category. He helped Michigan win 13 games in 2022 before the Wolverines fell in the semifinals against TCU. He had 135 receiving yards and a touchdown in that playoff game. So he does have some skill. He put up 5 seasons with Michigan. He had 889 yards and 4 touchdowns on 62 receptions in his final season, which would have been in 2023. So now that he's signed to a futures reserve contract with the Lions as of Tuesday, it'd be interesting to see, what he's going to be able to produce for Detroit. I think he's in a good position. He's going to hit the ground running, on the 90-man come spring training, training camp, assuming that he lasts that long and that the Lions don't, fill the roster and he ends up dropping out at some point. So good signing. Eric, we'll go to you then. Riley, what do you think?
Yeah. Why not? Kid was drafted and then they cut him after the season when they're going to have to make some huge decisions on their roster. This one doesn't make any sense to me. Was this a attitude thing or a mad because I'm not getting the ball kind of thing? I don't see how that could have been. I don't know how he would be a cap casualty. He can't cost anything. This one is mystifying.
He just never really had a chance to take off. What do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I don't remember this time last year did we sign a player so quickly after our season ending? It's nice to see the pieces start falling into place because last year during the summer, the concern or one of the main concerns on the team was, well, who's going to be the number 2 wide receiver, or number 3 wide receiver? I think a lot of people weren't even sold on JMO as a number 2. But the team finished number 1 in the entire league offensively. So it turned out like they had a plan. I knew who Tim Patrick was because I'm from Utah. He was a University of Utah Ute. But there was so much angst when Josh Reynolds left. And, you kind of sit back and trust Brad Holmes. And so when I see a name like, Lions have signed Ronnie Bell, that's not the Detroit Lions breaking news I was hoping to get. I was hoping to be preparing for the Eagles game this week, but I see it and I'm like,
so
okay.
this is just a futures deal. That's all it is. It's just they're not really signing, any game breakers right now, but it's just a futures deal, I think, for them to fill out their roster, to kind of have some players going into the OTAs, which will be here really quickly. He's going to be in a competitive room for sure.
Yeah.
The poll. So the poll we put out 36 minutes ago, 74 votes. Would you trade 2 first rounders and a third for Myles Garrett or Max Crosby? The chat has spoken. 86% say no. That leaves 14% to say yes. I wish there was a third option. Maybe I'll put a third option that says maybe next time. But 87% say no. So we'll end the poll there. 75 votes. And I would say that I wholeheartedly agree. I think you don't want to waste the future of this team. But let's talk about one potential future one potential player that the Lions could add now that they're poaching coaches from Tampa. Let's talk about a player for just a moment. And that player is, here, let me go back. And that player is Levante David. So now that the Lions are bringing in Larry Foote and they've already wrapped up Kacy Rodgers, do you see the Lions poaching any players from Tampa Bay? Now, we know that the linebacker room has been fairly depleted this season from injuries, but I think that we also need some players that can help elevate this room. With Derek Barnes on an expiring contract, Alex Anzalone's only signed, I think, for another season. The Lions could be looking to obviously upgrade and elevate this room, but Levante David, a little bit older, right? He's 34 years old. He spent every year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers so far throughout his career. Would it make sense for him to move and now that he's going to be a free agent this year to head up to Detroit with Kacy Rodgers and potentially Larry Foote to help this team push even harder to make a Super Bowl? So here's my quick notes. Obviously we could use some significant enhancements on the defensive side of the football this season. When you look at guys that could potentially produce, whether it's sacks or getting pressure or stopping the run, Levante David kind of fits that mold. He's not a big sack guy. He's only had like 39 through like 12 seasons or whatever it's been with Tampa Bay now. But he is a proven playmaker, and he has been for over a decade. He brings a unique blend of athleticism, intelligence, leadership that could elevate the Detroit Lions defense and bring it to new heights this season. Playmaking ability, David is a consistent tackler with excellent instincts, a knack for disrupting plays, and throughout his career, he has consistently ranked among the league leaders in tackles, showcasing his ability to diagnose plays and react very quickly. So I do love what he puts on tape. Obviously, the Lions had some difficulty each time we've gone up against the Bucs over the past couple of seasons where he's been a consistent disruptor. He does have some versatility. He is a major asset in that format with versatility. He can play both inside and outside linebacker. So when you get into a situation that the Lions had this season, losing players to injury, Levante David can fill in nicely going left, right, or inside. He can do it all. Aaron Glenn, obviously, now that we don't have Aaron Glenn, we don't really have the same scheme, or we may not have the same scheme, but Calvin Shepard, being the linebackers coach, at least for now, would obviously love to have playmakers like a Levante David. His adaptability allows this defense to adjust to different offensive formations and personnel groupings. Leadership and mentorship. And I think it's the latter half there, mentorship, that I think is key. As a seasoned veteran, David really brings invaluable leadership wherever he goes, whether he stays, with Tampa or moves on for another team or to another team for a Super Bowl run. Those qualities obviously are heralded in the Detroit Lions locker room. His experience and guidance to any new players, a young Jack Campbell or, another rookie that the Lions bring in this season would be invaluable, obviously helping them develop and improve. So proven success. Look, Levante David has consistently performed at a very high level throughout his entire career. He's earned numerous accolades, including a Super Bowl. I believe that was 2020 with Tom Brady. His track record of success speaks for itself, and he would bring a winning mentality to the Lions, which we already have. It would just be adding to it. My only concern here is, would we have too many chefs in the kitchen? Alex Anzalone is clearly the quarterback of our defense right now. Would this be too much for Alex Anzalone to have to compete with Levante David? Well, I think Alex is a consummate professional, and I think that Alex is going to want to have players on this team that can produce. And I don't think that he's going to shy away from players that can produce. In the run defense, though, David is a strong run defender. He can definitely fill the gaps, and he's been very effective at bringing down the ball carriers. His presence, in my opinion, would also bolster the Lions' run defense, which has been a point of emphasis for the Lions over the last 4 seasons. Again, moving on to a new defensive coordinator, I would not expect that to change. I think that you have to limit the run in order to limit the pass. As far as pass rush goes for him, while he's been primarily known for his tackling ability, he's capable of being a pass rusher. He's just not as effective as far as generating sacks. He does generate some good pressure, and that would be a valuable asset to the Lions when you're looking to get pressure on the quarterback from multiple angles and different alignments. Coverage skills. Now, this is where he has been known in his game to be elite. He's got really good coverage ability, and I believe that this is, again, providing flexibility for the Lions defense. I guess in conclusion here for Levante David, do I think the price is too high? He signed a one year, $8.5 million deal last season. Do we know if he's going to play another year? Is he set to retire? All of those questions we'll know soon enough. But if the Lions were able to get him for, a $5-6 million deal for one season, I do believe that would be a great benefit to the Lions to bring in another veteran defender that doesn't have to be on a high pitch count. He's right now working out of a 3-4 defense. So he has the ability, like I said, left, right, and center. He can do it all. And I think that it would be obviously great to have somebody that knows the style of defense that Kacy Rodgers and or Larry Foote, if he does join, like to run. So that's my 5 minutes here on Levante David and the Lions bringing in potential free agents from Tampa Bay since we are poaching some of their coaches. Now I'm going to turn it over to you guys. What do you think about Levante David? You're muted.
There we go. I was muted. So the Buccaneers, they had the number 4 defense against the run. They had the number 29 defense against the pass. And what did they have overall? So overall, the Buccaneers were 18th in total defense, giving up a total of 341.8 yards per game and gave up 41 touchdowns on the year. So kind of middle of the pack. So I don't know. I don't know if the Lions really need another veteran presence in the linebacker room, or if we want to do kind of like what we did last year with the cornerback position and double down, take 2 of them. So maybe they do that at edge, but also maybe they do that at linebacker. Maybe we double down and snag a couple of linebackers to pair with Anzalone and to pair with Jack Campbell, because Alex Anzalone, he's only going to go so far. He's getting up there, and then you're going to be left with Jack Campbell, because Rodrigo, he's good, but he's not a game changer. Derek Barnes is probably gone. He's going to want too much money, even though he was injured all year. Then,
well, to your point there, though, on Derek Barnes, I mean, the fact that he was injured, I think that does give him more of an opportunity to come back to Detroit on a 1 year, kind of prove it deal. And we know that Dan Campbell loved, Derek Barnes, but more so AG. He really, fell in love with Derek Barnes, and maybe Derek Barnes moves on to the Jets. There's a possibility for that too. I would not be surprised that, some of these guys on expiring deals and free agents for the Lions this year don't find their way on Aaron Glenn's team, especially defensively. So,
or to the Bears.
Yeah, and the thing for me, well, maybe some of the offensive players, but the thing for me here with Levante David, and then Riley will get your opinion here too, he may retire, right? It's just, I'm starting the conversation that when we start to look at coaches that we're bringing in, okay, what players? So there's plenty of players that are free agents, and I'll be highlighting them today. I'll do a few videos on them today. I started doing them yesterday, but with the internet, I couldn't get anything done. I couldn't get anything to upload. So when you look at the Bucs, they have a bevy of unrestricted free agents that could end up helping this team. And I'll start with defensive lineman Will Golston. Now, he's a former Michigan State product, but he's played every season in Tampa. He's up there in age. I think he's been in the league now about 10 seasons. But again, if you're looking for a little elder statesman, somebody that has some good experience, can be a vet leader, great backup, good rotational player. I think he only played about 18% of snaps. He is somebody you could probably get on a lower tier deal, talking about second tiered options to help fill out our depth, right? Because depth is the most important according to Brad Holmes. Or how about outside linebacker Joe Shoyinka, another younger option for the Lions to bring in, or the guy that I really thought was going to take a run at Detroit, but he didn't. He tucked his tail and went to Tampa, was Shaquille Barrett. He's another unrestricted free agent. Does he want to take now a shot in Detroit where, damn it, if he just would have, maybe we would have had a better opportunity at going further in the playoffs. You also have KJ Britt. So there's lots of options between linebackers and defensive linemen. You got Greg Gaines. You've got a couple of safeties and cornerbacks. So there's options coming out of Tampa, and we know that when coaches move, sometimes players follow. So what do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I think you're just kind of leaving a breadcrumb trail, and it makes sense, right? You start looking at potential players that we could get, but Levante David, he's 34, but he's played every regular season game 2 of the last 3 years. And I think that if they bring him in, that's the type of durability we're looking for. I do think a lot of the injuries were freak injuries, but that's one thing that they're going to need to change next year is how can we obviously do whatever we can to limit these and avoid these, and bringing in a player, even if he is a little bit older, but he has leadership and he fits, and they'll vet all that out. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised either way if they sign him or if they don't. And if they do, I will be optimistic about it because I'll trust that, just like they did with Carlton Davis, you bring in a veteran guy, you're mixing him with, when you were talking about that earlier, Will, with the DB room, you've got Iffy, you've got Branch, you've got Terrion Arnold, you've got Amik Robertson, you've got Carlton Davis, a perfect blend and mix for a position group. It'd be interesting to see not only who we get in free agency, but also who we draft. I'm getting excited, man, for this offseason.
I am too, man. This is the to me, it's the most fun part of the season is heading into the draft, and then it kind of goes into a lull, in June there, and then you pick up right in July with training camp. So next up, I want to highlight a mailbag question. So the mailbag question came in last night from Precision Staining. I don't know if he's with us this morning or not, but I wanted to highlight this question. It was, how often are teams hiring from the loss of coordinators to head coaches from within? So he doesn't. He says, I don't see it often, maybe from lower jobs coming, but not all the way up. So the question really is, how many times do teams hire from within to become coordinators, offensive or defensive coordinators? Now, quickly, I had 2, and then Riley, I'm going to ask you what you found. But the 2 that I saw from last season were Zach Orr, the Ravens defensive coordinator. So the Ravens promoted Zach Orr to the role of defensive coordinator on February 1st, or replaces Mike McDonald after the Seahawks hired McDonald to be their next head coach. Orr previously spent 6 seasons on Baltimore's defensive staff following the conclusion of his playing career. So there's one instance. And then on the Bills. Now get this. The Bills didn't do it once. They did it twice. The Bills promoted Joe Brady, as their full-time offensive coordinator on January 28th of last season. Brady took over as the interim offensive coordinator mid-season after Buffalo fired Ken Dorsey. And then Bobby Babick. Bobby Babick was promoted to the defensive coordinator from his position as the linebackers coach on January 30. So we've seen the Bills obviously have some great success this season. The Ravens had some great success as well on the defensive side of the football. So it does work. It can happen. But Riley, who else did you find?
Yeah, the Cincinnati Bengals had promoted Dan Pitcher from their quarterbacks coach to their offensive coordinator. The Raiders had promoted Antonio Pierce and made him, he became interim head coach, and then they eventually made him the head coach. In LA, the Rams had promoted their pass rush coordinator and linebackers coach, Chris Shula, who's now their defensive coordinator. And then in New England, Gerard Mayo went from being the linebackers coach to the head coach. DeMarcus Covington went from being the defensive line coach to the defensive coordinator. So it happens.
So I'm just going to ask the question. I've said it yesterday, and I'm going to ask it one more time. I didn't get your take on it yesterday, but would you be okay with the Lions promoting an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator from internal staff? Riley.
It would be a little unconventional, it would feel like. But again, and I'm not just saying this with blind, everything the Lions do is, everything they touch turns to gold. But I don't have enough reason to doubt Brad Holmes or Dan Campbell to doubt their judgment. So if they ended up making that decision, yes, I would be on board with that.
Do you have a top three or top two, at least from inside Detroit, that you would say, these would be my guys offensively or defensively?
They're the names that you and Eric have talked about on the show throughout the week. Scott Montgomery, who is the other offensive coordinator?
Tanner Engstrand.
Yeah.
Tanner Engstrand.
Yeah. But again, I mean, it was Ben Johnson what was he, a tight ends coach under Matt Patricia? And I remember we had A. Lynn, and it was supposed to be this awesome thing because he was a great play caller. And then
former head coach, right?
Former head coach Dan Campbell takes over because it's not working. And then all of a sudden you just never know when you've got this absolute gem already on the staff. And Ben Johnson proved to be that. But again, I think really, these guys are so important. The coordinators are so important. I don't want to overlook that, but I just feel like Dan Campbell is such a damn good football coach that I think whoever comes in, he's gonna get him up to speed. I'm excited to see who they end up hiring, but I trust Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell with them in charge. I think we're going to be in a good position.
I agree. And Eric, I know we've gotten your take on it this week, but are you still kind of in line? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we could go internal for both offensive and defensive coordinator. I really do. I think Scotty Montgomery could come and fill in admirably. And then defensive, having a brain block this morning, but it would have been like Calvin Shepard. Obviously, Terrell Williams is gone. Yeah, I think Calvin Shepard is someone they've been grooming since day one to take this over, because they've been grooming all along for him to take over, and he's getting interest from other teams. It's been rumored that Aaron Glenn wants to interview him for the Jets defensive coordinator job.
Well, that's kind of weird because Aaron Glenn said the other day he's not going to take any staff from Detroit.
Oh, was it? I can't remember. I thought it was. I thought I saw a rumor that he was going to interview him. So maybe it wasn't. Maybe I read the wrong thing.
Let me take a look.
Yeah. While you pull that up, I'm just having the thought too. Look, if there is a situation where you are going to promote from within, it would make sense that a 15-2 team would be the one to do it, right? You're not necessarily moving to outsource just to say, you're not going to make the trade just for the sake of making a trade. And I'm not going to not hire somebody that's qualified and capable just because, they're already on the staff. So I need to go hire somebody from the outside. No, you need to hire the right person, whoever you deem that to be.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Yeah.
You have people that have been in your offensive and defensive system for 3 or 4 years apiece, and it's going to be some continuity, but then they can put their own flavor into it as well. So you're not running the exact same plays on offense against the Bears this year, but you have the base, you have the map, right? Yeah, but you can take a different way to get there this time. You don't have to take Highway 101. You can take Highway 104 instead. So
that's a great analogy.
So there's, I don't know if you want to call it a rumor, but there is one article. I've never read this Pro Football Rumors. I don't know anything about it. But it does mention in there that obviously when Glenn takes the job in New York, that Shepard is the likely replacement in Detroit for DC, but also for the Jets.
Yep.
So there's a light tie, right? I'm gonna go banked on what Aaron Glenn apparently put out, that he's not gonna poach anybody from Detroit. So we'll see if that actually.
Who do you want
happens?
Will?
We kind of talked about it yesterday. I'm not going to recap all of them again right now, but internally, I think Scotty Montgomery is probably the best option internally, and I do like him better than Tanner, even though. Tanner's got good experience, but I think that what Scotty Montgomery has done, with this rush game, how can you not want Scotty to be the leader of the offense when, he definitely commands a presence. He commands a room. He's definitely a leader. People listen to him. He's well respected, and I think that Scotty's the guy. defensively, there's no doubt that Kelvin Shepherd is a leader of men. There's just no doubt that, he also commands a presence in a room.
Right.
He's got the voice. He's got 10 years of NFL experience. I think that there's no reason why you wouldn't want to interview him at a very minimum. But Terrell Williams was the guy. Like, he, in my opinion, would have been the guy to totally revamp this defense to a degree, tweaking a few things. But he's gone. So now your next internal option, I don't think it gets any better than Kelvin Shepherd. I don't know that Deshea Townsend, even though he's been interviewed for DC, I think it was in San Fran.
Yep.
I don't think that he's at the level that Kelvin is. So
yep.
We'll get into a couple of mock drafts here probably in the last 15 minutes. And then this is up next. So Sheila Hamp, she follows suit every year by penning a note to season ticket holders. Now, obviously, everyone ends up seeing it anyway. So it's really to all fans, but she pens a letter to the Lions season ticket holders and, stating confident in where we are going. So here's a letter from Sheila. She says, "Dear Lions loyal member, this is not the letter I was hoping to write you this year. It's not the ending we wanted or were expecting. The fact of the matter is this. We had a great year, a record-setting season, but fell short of our ultimate goal. What never falls short is your support. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the support we have received from all of you, the city of Detroit, and the entire state of Michigan. Ford Field is a legitimate home field advantage, and that is because of you. It also felt like you gave us a home field advantage in most of the away stadiums we played in this year. We appreciate you more than you will ever know. Your support continues to fuel us toward bigger things. I am proud of the year we had. I am proud of our players, our coaches, our personnel department, and our entire staff. Because at the Lions, we live the one pride concept and truly win and lose together. I know this weekend was difficult, and the next few weeks will be hard to watch as other teams walk the path we envisioned. But please know that we have never been more motivated. I know the future will look different, and the team that brought us so much success this year will never be together again. Pieces will change, but we are confident in where we are going and more aligned than ever as to how we get there. One of the goals I set for our franchise was to create sustained success. There it is.
Yep.
The last 2 years have started that process. Back-to-back NFC North Division champions and home playoff appearances are the type of successes that we envisioned. And we are on the path to continuing that. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you for donning your Honolulu blue. And thank you for buying your Honolulu blue coffee. Yeah, she said that. And thank you for continuing to be driving force behind the one pride. Go Lions, Sheila Hamp. So the biggest thing that I took out of this, well, 2 things, maybe 3 things. The fact that she mentioned buy your Honolulu blue coffee today at buymeacoffee.com/rockdon. That's one thing. But it's the sustained success, and it's something that I will continue to pound my drum over because I've witnessed it. I've seen it now. We've seen it around the league. And I would dare you to go look at any of the teams out there that are having success year after year after year. I made the same analogy to the Chiefs last year. When you look who's on that Chiefs team to start the season, go back and look at the last 10 drafts and tell me who's on that team today as a starter. Tell me who's on that team today that's making a difference. They built through the draft. You supplement in free agency. You build through the draft. It's exactly what they're doing here. We're building through the draft for many reasons, but the most important reason is the cap. If you want to have a Matt Millen era style of cap situation, if you want to have a Quinn Trisha era style of cap situation, then you are going to go buy the most expensive free agents that you can get your hands on in 2025. That will quickly derail this team off the tracks, and then we will be back into the situation where everyone's talking about the Bobby Lane curse again. And all the SOL fans are going to come out of the woodwork like they already have this last week. and say that we're doing everything wrong when they're just not patient enough. And I get it. If you don't think that I am as vested as anybody else in going to all of these games for all of these years and spending well over $100,000 of my own money going to these games, it's insanity to think that we would ever want anything but success. And so if you don't think that I'm not patient like many Lions fans because we want success now, we've gotten a taste of it and we want to see what's on the other side and we want to hoist that Lombardi, of course we do. We're all impatient for that. But if we're not just a little bit more patient right now, all of this negative energy is going to do what it started to do last year with players leaving. It infects them. They don't want to be around a toxic fan base. And every fan base has it. But if we continually pour out this negative energy, who's going to want to come hang out with us on Sundays in Ford Field? We're not going to be able to attract the best players. Sometimes it's not just about money. Sometimes it's about everything surrounding the team. And if you have bad media members that are constantly berating the team and berating players, and networks and YouTube channels or whatever, tell me that they don't hear it. You'd be a fool. They do. They hear it. They read it. And I'm sick of seeing it. So why not just be a little bit more patient? Just a little bit. We've had an incredible couple of seasons. We're almost there. And I know it hurts. But the sustained success can only happen if they continue this process. We're almost there. Like, we are so close. This year should have been the year, but it wasn't. And it wasn't because we suffered way too many injuries. The other thing that I took out of this, the home field advantage at away games. That is so incredible that we are able to travel in the way that we do. Now, I didn't get to as many away games as I would have liked to this year, but we are going to do the road games with the bus. They're going to be organized over the next couple of weeks. We will have to take some placeholder deposits so that we can ensure when the organizations call me and say, here's your tickets, that we can pay for them, because I'm not putting out $20,000 for tickets and then counting on people showing up. So I'm going to put it together. We're going to do a bus of 50 people going to a few games. It'll definitely be all of the NFC North games and then any of the other games that are fairly close. It's all inclusive like we were doing last year. It'll include hotel. It'll include lunches on the way there and back. It'll include all of your soft drinks and waters and Gatorades and stuff like that. You just bring your own spirits or whatever you want to drink. And then if we have time to do tailgate beforehand, we'll include that too and get it all set up. So that's our goal for this season. And then, of course, any leftover proceeds, we're going to be doing some raffles. Big time stuff. Like, we're talking $1,000 pieces of art of Detroit Lions art that is going to get raffled off to one lucky winner that's on the bus that day. Your first ticket is included. You can buy other tickets, to it as well. So I'll put all that together again. I doubt that I'm going to use Eventbrite because Buy Me a Coffee has a ticket creation section in there where I can create events and get you an actual ticket. And we can monitor it that way too. So those are the things that I really took out of this. We travel well. We support our team. We have home field advantage away and home. And the sustained success, which I think is key. Eric, what do you think?
What do I think? What's the question of, though?
What do you think about her letter?
Oh, her letter?
Yeah.
It's great. And it's telling you they're on point. They know exactly the direction they're going. That's what it tells me. That the sky is not falling. Yes, we lost in the playoffs. Yes, we were one and done. But listen, we were 15-2. We came from the ashes of 0-16. We came from 3-13-1. And in 4 years, we've went back-to-back NFC championships. That just doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen without a plan. Now, I think Sheila, Brad, and Dan have the ultimate plan, and it's going to work. And listen, it may take a few tries to get to the Super Bowl. I know everyone had their heart set on it this year. I had my heart set on it this year. Next year, maybe my heart's not set on the Super Bowl. for now, my heart's going to be on let's win the division. Let's go for a three-peat on the NFC North title. Let's make it to the playoffs. Let's get our ticket to the dance. Let's try for that number 1 seed again. Let's see what happens.
Riley?
Yeah, it makes me think of this quote of nothing good lasts forever. Things in life change always, right? And you have to stop obsessing over the result. I want a Super Bowl championship so bad. I want to win a championship. But you have to enjoy the journey. And I think going into next year, no matter just already the structure of it, going into what next year is going to be looking like, I think the Lions are going to be right at the top of the NFC, just where they're projected. Like we're not going anywhere. This season didn't end the way we hoped, but I trust the team. I trust the leadership of the team, the direction of the team, and all the way out from Utah. I'm like an adopted Detroit native just through this football team that I love so much. But I'm excited for the offseason. I've already kind of gone through that mental and emotional pain from the season ending. But it, like you said at the start of the show today, Will, it's a 365 days a year. This is something we all enjoy together, and it's all about evolution from here.
Mm-hmm.
Evolution, good word. Yeah, I love it. So, a couple of things in the chat. Someone was asking if we hired Larry Foote. I don't think yet. He's coming in for an interview. But the one thing that I want to point out, which is what I said the other day, is I think that the Lions are going to stick with coordinators that have playing experience. Larry Foote was a 13-year NFL vet, and he played 11 of those in Pittsburgh, and he was a damn good player. Be interesting. He won 2 Super Bowls in 05 and 08, and he's got ties to Michigan, obviously being a former Michigan player. So I think it's a perfect fit. Last topics here. Mel Kiper put out his first mock draft. And now that we're getting closer to, the last couple of teams that are, after this weekend, where it's going to be 2 more teams added to the list here of where they pick. Let me end this poll. Would you promote the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator from within? 40 votes, 62% said yes. 38% said no. So I think that, just based on only 40 votes, obviously representing the fan base, people are okay with it. We need more votes next time. So, Mel Kiper. Now, I got to say this. Mel Kiper puts out a lot of stuff. I think he's an intelligent individual, but he gets just about everything wrong. Just about everybody gets everything wrong when it comes to these mock drafts. They're very, very, very tough to do. The guy that I do want you guys to follow this year is Thor Nystrom over at Fantasy Life. Thor is obviously going to be attacking this year's draft just as he always does. I want to be paying a lot of attention to what he's doing as well. We'll have some conversations with him later on throughout the season. But Mel Kiper's first mock draft, can you imagine who he picked? He obviously thinks that the Lions need pass rush help. I think it's more so pass rush sustainability. I think it's, you fill the roster based on not just the ability of the player, but I think it's the ability of the salary cap. And we will be returning Zadarius Smith, as we know right now. There's no plans to trade him. So you're already going to have Zadarius and Aiden Hutchinson. So that's a great start. And you might have a couple of guys behind them for depth. If you add another rookie right now, and if Wingo begins to develop even more, and you had Josh Paschal, who really developed this past season as an as a defensive end, as more of the crush the can end, right? Adding one through the draft just makes perfect sense. And the player that Mel Kiper picked so far is Tennessee defensive lineman James Pierce Jr. James Pierce Jr. So let me pull up the information here on James Pierce Jr. According to this excerpt here by ESPN, it says this: even with Aiden Hutchinson back in the picture next season, Detroit can't let the Super Bowl window slip away because the pass rush doesn't have enough juice. I'd say more so didn't have enough depth after we lost 5 players, but how much more depth can you have? The Lions 37 sacks, tied for 23rd in the NFL this season. They were also 25th in the pass rush win rate at 35.4%. Injuries wore down the defense, but there weren't enough playmakers there to begin with, which is not true. Even after the midseason trade for Zadarius Smith, Pierce still needs to build out his frame. He's 6'5", but his speed could make a difference in Detroit. He mixes up pass rush moves and gets home to the quarterback. He had 17 and a half sacks over the past 2 seasons. So where I disagree with this is very simple. You go back and look at the numbers that we were producing through the first 8-9 weeks of the season when we had significant depth still available to play the game. We were one of the best in the league, top 10 for sure. Obviously, Aiden had, a lot of pressures and 5.5 sacks, I think it was, pretty quickly in one game. That skewed everything. When you go up against really crap offensive lines, yeah, you're going to have better numbers, stat padding, if you will. It doesn't explain the whole season. It doesn't explain the ability of the whole entire roster. It doesn't explain the sustained defense that you're going to have throughout the season. I do agree. You always want to get better. You have to get younger, and you have to add somebody underneath Aiden that can, at some point, push these guys either to be better or to help them win. And when we can start this season healthy, obviously we're going to have more of an opportunity to get to the passer or create, more pressures, which will allow Kirby, if he's here, or, Kirby will be here, or anybody else to have success picking off the ball. The other mock draft that I pulled up, once I can find my sheet again, is fan-sided, mock 2.0. Can't believe they already have 2 done. I haven't even done 1. Now, they went with Donovan Ezerukau. I probably butchered his name. Boston College edge. Now, after the bitter end to the Lions season against Washington, it's back to the drawing board. Step 1 should be finding a long-term running mate for Aiden Hutchinson on the edge, which that makes sense too, right? Because Darius Smith isn't going to be here forever, and we do need somebody. We do need somebody to match up to him for the long term, especially if Davenport's not going to be back. So Donovan might not have the pedigree of others on the side of his helmet. I don't understand that. They're probably talking about him going to Boston College. But the BC product can be that guy. He's coming off of a 14-sack season with the Eagles last year, but also was a well above average run defender. He could be more of a speed rusher and then more than a well-rounded Hutchinson, and set up his defensive front for years to come. So clearly everyone's thinking edge rusher, edge rusher, edge rusher. Do you guys agree, disagree? Do you have anybody else in your mind? Have you looked at anybody else yet?
I would think that they might go offensive lineman.
In the first round?
Yeah. Just because he's always trying to keep this line going.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some guys that are getting up there. Taylor Decker, how long does he have to go? You're bringing Manu up to hopefully take that position someday. Mahogany's looking like a home run in the 6th round. And it just depends about Zeitler, what he's going to do this year. Is he going to come back for one more?
Well, the way his wife tweeted something out, can't wait to see what year 14 is going to be. I think it was year 14 or 13.
Yeah,
it sounds like he's coming back, but where, who, when, how much,
Yeah. And that was with a picture of Zeitler dressed up as Dan Campbell and her dressed up as Zeitler. So I thought that was pretty cool. Back from Halloween. I don't know. I think it's a little too early for me to figure out exactly where we're going to go in this draft. To get a feel for it, you got to see what happens with free agency. And I got to get my eyeballs on some of these college guys, because I don't watch college ball. I just don't. I didn't even watch the national championship. It was 2 teams that were completely uninteresting to me. So I didn't watch it. I don't know who most of them are. And watching the Deion Sanders show on Amazon Prime is the only reason I know about, Hunter and Shador and the Sanders kids. But other than that, I know Hunter won the Heisman.
Yeah.
And,
Well, that's why we go to the combine too.
Well, yeah. That's, I haven't been down there yet. I haven't gotten my eyeballs on any of these guys, so I have no clue for college people. I don't know if this is a linebacker heavy draft or if this is a left tackle heavy draft. Sounds like there's not a lot of QBs in this draft. With the teams that are talking about it at the top of the draft, that there's not a lot of, after Shador and Cam Ward, I think his name is, after those two, there's nobody, I guess. So it's not like last year where you had 6 or 8 guys that had some possibility to actually do something.
So Riley, I'm sure you got to get running, but what's your quick here on edge rusher, and what do you think about the first round?
Yeah, I want to concur wholeheartedly with what you said with Thor Nystrom being a great source. I know this time last year, the name that I kept seeing was Braylon Trice. That was the edge player from Washington, projected to go to the Lions.
Stop stabbing me and Will.
You guys like that guy a lot or something?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't care for Braylon Trice. No.
No, Fisk. It was Fisk.
Yes, Fisk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fisk I like later, not early. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was the point, I guess, just being that was kind of the thought, and then going up to it, it changed, but because there's going to be multiple needs. I suppose right now, that would make sense that it would be an edge player. I'll tell you, the one other name I've seen in the mock drafts I've started looking at is this Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. I don't know how many Michigan fans feel about that, but I don't know, man.
It's funny because I was just going to talk about Jack. Like, could you see an Ohio State edge and a Michigan edge working together?
Oh, that'd be funny.
We might see it. If they're wearing the same color Honolulu blue, I think we can all buy in pretty damn quick. Right?
Well, that's the thing. See, a fan doesn't understand a lot of times is that you've got to learn to separate Saturdays and Sundays, because when these guys enter the draft, they are no longer a player at the college ranks. They are a professional. The team they play for has nothing to do with their college anymore. Now, these guys still have fun in the locker room. Like I know Aiden and Taylor Decker, had like some bets and stuff going on, some fun bets with their two teams, Ohio State and Michigan. But yeah, you just got to separate Saturdays and Sundays, man. You really do. It's hard. I understand it. It's hard, but
part of it.
Just leave the college game alone when these guys are in the pros, because people, they look at what Aiden did in his final year of Michigan, and that was the only year that he ever really produced. And they thought that he was going to have this tremendous, professional career because of that. It takes time. He's had a couple of good seasons. I mean, they know they calculate a lot of pressures for him, but people predicting 20, 25 sacks in the season. It's like, wait a second here. He's going to take some time to develop. And now after this leg, he's really going to take some time. I didn't mean to cut you off, Riley. Do you have anything else?
Right. No, you're good. I think.
So the other thing here, there was a question about Aleem McNeil, and see that's another reason why I don't think you can always count a defensive end in the first round. I think it's going to be first or second round right now, but that also depends on what we do in free agency. That's why everything that we do now, mock draft wise, between now and free agency is going to be one thing, and then when free agency happens, everything changes. Mm-hmm. So if they pick up a defensive tackle or a defensive end in free agency, well, then that totally changes what you're going to, depending on how old they are, that's totally going to change what you're doing in the draft, more than likely. Now, last year, Brad doubled down, with 2 in the draft and 2 in free agency, but that was for a reason. He was trying to shore up a position that he tried to shore up the year before.
Yeah.
So this could be, another situation, but the question on Aleem McNeil. So yeah, he's probably done, until November next year. We'll see. There's a possibility that he could be ready by training camp. That would be roughly 9 months, 8 months out of surgery. It'd be pretty quick to come back. When you look at the trajectory of those types of injuries, it's usually 11 to 12 months. And the same thing I said about JMO is, even though you're back in your first year and you're at the end of the season, you're still got to figure out yourself. Like, you're still going to have those thoughts in your head, like, is it going to happen again? Can I trust it? Do I feel safe? and that's why honestly next year, Ali might have a very bleak year. He may not even come back. If it's November and he's now cleared, when is he going to feel totally healthy? When is he going to be able to really produce? So maybe it's defensive tackle again next year. Thankfully, we have DJ Reader. But I think there could be another defensive tackle added to this team, whether it's free agency or draft. Either way, we need another powerhouse in the middle there. Broderick Martin, maybe he makes a big leap. Maybe he doesn't. We don't know. It's his third season next year. That is when he's supposed to be who he's supposed to be. So we'll find out. Final moments for the day. I guess, what do you guys think? I mean, if you want to expand upon the mock draft, or if you just want to kind of wrap up the week, we'll go to you first, Riley.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm also excited, for I think most people in the chat, if you're not already subscribed to the Talkin' Football channel on the Rocked On Podcast Network, do me a favor, go subscribe to that channel. Hopefully these guys will be coming on. We'll be doing some collaborations with Will, doing a lot of draft coverage. Everybody knows, I say it every time, probably overly so, just how much I love this channel, how much I appreciate Will and Eric and the great work that they do. This is a destination. This is the place to be. I'm comparing how I felt Saturday to right now. I've already turned that page, and it's just this journey of football fandom. I'm appreciative to do this with all of you guys. And my heart bleeds blue. I love the Detroit Lions so much, and I'm so excited for this upcoming offseason of coverage right here on the Rocked On Podcast Network.
All right, buddy. Well, you have a good day. I know you got to head off to work, so we'll catch up with you later on in the day. Thanks for joining this morning.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate you.
All right, we'll see you later, Riley. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so Eric, what are your final thoughts for the day, man?
All right. As a Lions fan, it pains me every day, this loss. Like, I've taken it to heart. Now, it's not as bad as last year. Last year, we were 17 minutes away, literally, from the Super Bowl. So that one stung a little bit. So maybe this one's a little easier to get over. But something has happened every single day this week, and it's going to happen again today to me. I've gotten something in the mail every single day that says Detroit Lions on it. I got my NFC North little coin, for the 2024 NFC North back-to-back champs. I got that in the mail yesterday. The day before, I got a different hat, and the day before I got a shirt, and it's all NFC North champions, and it's just like a knife to the guts every day, reminding me that we were one and done and we failed this year. I know we accomplished a lot and we made it to 15-2, but man, it still stings for me. It really burns and stings, and together we'll get over it, though. All of us together, we'll make it. We'll get there. Got a lot to look forward to. The draft, free agency. Let's get some new coordinators in here. Maybe we'll find something out today. Maybe we'll find something out this weekend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, who we are bringing in, especially defensive coordinator, because I do believe that, a lot of your free agents that you can bring in are going to be tied to some of your coaches. And I think it's been the same for all the coaches that we've had, or for all the players that we've brought in. It seems like there's always a tie somewhere. And the one thing that I pointed out last year, I did a big deep dive on Brad Holmes. I don't know if you remember this, but I went in and looked at every player that the Rams brought in for their draft visits, visits, their in-person interviews. And then I looked at how many free agents did we sign from that list, and the number would shock you. I don't remember the number right now, but it was like a large majority of the players that we brought in met with the Rams during the draft process in those respective years that they were drafted. So there's big ties to relationships in Detroit. And that is something that they speak about all the time. It's the relationships, it's Dan Campbell's relationships to other coaches. Was Aaron Glenn's relationships to other players. And, Ben Johnson was with the Lions for a long time, so he didn't really have a ton of relationships outside of that. I believe he's with Miami before that. So look forward to the same thing this year. It's going to be the relationships that I think rebuilds this team. It speaks to the same thing that they do every year, is their way. It's the Lions process. Whether you believe in it or not, whether you hate it or you love it, it's what they're going to do. And it makes sense because it's working. You don't break something or, or you don't fix something that isn't broke, right? You just need to adjust it. You need to recalibrate it a little bit. You just got to tweak it and get it running straight again. Yep, we fell out of alignment. Ball wobbled a little bit in the air this season because we lost a lot of players. Well, let's put a little bit more air in the ball and let's throw that thing straight a little bit more this season, and I think that we will. There's no reason to doubt Jared Goff. The guy has improved every single season that he's been in Detroit. And when I'm talking improvement, we're talking record-setting numbers improvement that he's had over the last 3 seasons. He's thrown over 4,000 yards the last 3 seasons. Some players, they can't even get to 3,500 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And Jared's throwing 1,000 more than them. Oh, and we've got over, a couple thousand, rush yards too. It's incredible what we've been able to do. And I don't think that it's all Ben Johnson either. And I think that's the other thing that people have to quickly get out of their heads. Like this offense isn't going to come back and be the same. I'm expecting it to be the same and better. Sometimes when you have this shakeup, guess what happens? Teams that are going to see us next year aren't going to have a damn clue as to what we're doing. A lot of it will be the same, sure, but a lot of it's going to be different too. The keys are going to be different. The calls are going to be different. And to have a new scheme that there's not a ton of tape on, that benefits most teams in their first season. No one could catch up to the Lions the last 3 seasons. We had the same type of offense, same coordinators, run the same stuff, and they still couldn't catch up to us. It's going to be even better in 2025. I guarantee it. Offensively, I don't know how they can get better, but they will somehow. Defensively, we need to get better. And that's mostly just stay healthy. I think if we just stay healthy, we'll be fine.
Yep.
So that's my final take of the day. You guys have been great. Appreciate you guys smashing that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. We are so close to hitting another milestone. I will come back later today and do the raffles. Now that I have internet, I can actually get it prepared because I couldn't pull all the names down. It takes a long time to set that stuff up. So I will do it later on today. If not tonight, we'll do another live show, just kind of wrapping up the week or whatever.
Hey,
all right,
Will.
Eric, have a wonderful day. Unless you got anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah, just one more. Can you stay on for just a second after we're done?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right, you guys have a wonderful day. Take care. Go on Pride. Go Detroit Lions. We'll see you.
Hear them voices rising high. Every morning, feel that passion, let it fly. Talking about the Lions, blue and silver pride. With the podcast, we're rolling, take that ride. Rise and grind, Detroit's calling out. Football dreams in every shout. Tune in, feel the energy ignite. Oh, rise and grind, take flight. Each play, each kick, we feel alive, alive. Echoes in the city as the fans arrive. Heart of the motor, in the screen. We're bound together by football dreams. Rise and grind, Detroit's calling out. Football dreams in every shout. Tune in, feel the energy ignite. Oh, rise and grind, take flight. Hey, feel the unity, the pride electrified. There under the stadium lights, where legends thrive. Every touchdown, we're close to clock west. In Detroit, we stand. Get down there. Rise and grind, Detroit's calling out. Football dreams in every shout.